أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Conducting a systematic review. Now, this particular section is a quick summary of the main steps involved in conducting a systematic review. Now, we have already looked into all these steps in detail in previous slides. Now, here is the reference for this particular summary. Now, the first step, what authors do is that they identify the issue and determine the research question. So, the first thing that you have to do is you have to propose a research question. We have discussed in detail that how you can propose a research question depending on the type of review that you are conducting. Now, write a plan for your review. Now, how would you plan for your review? How will you search the papers? What databases are you going to search? Now, again, go on and search the study. Now, the next step, sift and select the study. You can read the keywords, you can read the title, you can read the abstract, you can read the introduction, you can go into the methodology, you can go even into the analysis and see which studies actually fit the requirement of your study, or they can help you answer the research question. Extract the data. Again, for extraction, you can use different tools or you can use the old school Excel. Just create the columns and extract the information, put it in there. I normally prefer using Excel. For me, reason being, I've got all the information in there. This can help me become more critical as well, because if I'm putting things in Excel, I'm actually reading them, then selecting them, putting them in Excel, maybe formatting them again, and then again I'm reading them. So this multiple reading is very good for early career researchers. So if you are an early career researcher, please use Excel. Obviously, if you are mid-career or at advanced stage and you've published a lot of papers, then obviously you can go for the softwares and do it in a quicker manner. Assess the quality of the study. Now, there are different ways to assess the quality of those studies. For example, where were they published? What was the review process? All these things can help you determine the quality of the study. Then again, look at the methodology. So, the next step, combine the data. Now, synthesize or meta-analysis. Now, let's say we do not do the meta-analysis. For now, we are just synthesizing the information. You can combine the data. See, for example, let's say 5 studies found a significant relationship between two variables. 3 studies found an insignificant relationship. 2 studies found a negative relationship. Now, this is called synthesis. Now, based on this information that is now available to you, you can conclude that the relationship between these two variables is yet not very conclusive. Now, discuss and conclude your overall findings, and this is your systematic review that you then disseminate, or you actually distribute it or try to publish it for others to read. So this is the overall summary of the systematic review. Reporting and dissemination. Once the systematic review is complete, the next critical step is to report and disseminate the findings effectively. This ensures that the insights gained contribute to the academic knowledge. Obviously, you are contributing to the body of literature. Inform practice. They have practical implications and they provide guidance for future research as well. Writing the review report. So, what's included? A well written review report is essential for communicating the process and the findings of your SLR clearly and transparently. Now, key components typically include, so you will have to have an abstract, which is the concise summary of the background, objective, methods, results, and conclusions. You have an introduction. You explain the rationale for review. You describe your research questions and how are these research questions and that SLR is relevant to the field if you are focusing on a specific field as well. Methodology. Describe in detail the search strategy, inclusion, exclusion criteria, data sources, screening process, synthesis methods. Now, again, maybe you would like to have a separate section on the literature review as well, so you can do that. Otherwise, normally it's combined with the introduction. But you can have a separate section on a literature review as well, whereby you can describe the concepts in more detail. Now, if the concepts are not described in greater detail, but rather the focus is on briefly describing the concepts and then focusing on the methodology, analysis, synthesis, then you can skip a separate section on literature review and describe the concepts with the introduction. Results. Now, this section has to be very detailed. That's the reason, normally, in order to meet the requirement of the number of words, introduction and literature review, whereby the literature review is focused on describing the key terminologies, is within the introduction. Present findings in an organized manner, often using tables and figures, include the number of studies included, quality assessment, and key patterns and themes. Discussion. This section has to be detailed as well. Interpret the results, discuss implications, limitations, and how findings relate to existing literature, and finally, the conclusion. It summarizes the main insights and suggests directions for future research. Now, obviously, different journals may have different format as well. So you will have to look into the journal where you plan to submit your review. References, obviously the list of all sources cited in the standardized citation format. It could be Howard, it could be APA. Clarity, structure, and transparency are key throughout the writing process. So whatever you are writing, whether it's an SLR or it's a research article, these things have to be there. The writing has to be clear. It has to be well structured. It has to be transparent. Obviously, the amount of bias when writing a research article may be higher, but in an SLR, it has to be minimal, zero. Try to have as much transparency as possible. Now, again, we can have different reporting standards. Now, you can have a PRISMA or others. Let's say, to ensure quality reproducibility, it is important to follow recognized reporting guidelines such as PRISMA. Now, it's preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis, a widely used standard that provides a checklist and flow diagram to improve the clarity and transparency of SLRs. It guides researchers in reporting how studies were identified, screened, and selected. And we had an example earlier as well. Now, using such standard helps in developing a more credible, and plus it helps in developing scientific rigor as well. So you are enhancing your credibility and developing scientific rigor. Now, allows a replication and validation of findings. So if I'm conducting a study in Pakistan, someone can use those standards in America, India, Bangladesh, Australia, New Zealand, and conduct the same study. Now, facilitate peer review and publication process, obviously, because it enhances credibility and scientific rigor. Now, these standards are often required by top-tier journals and funding agencies. Now, disseminating the review findings. And dissemination involves sharing your findings with relevant audiences in format they can understand and use. And this can include academic publications. Now, you can submit your papers to top-tier peer-reviewed journals. You can submit it for conference presentation, which are later published in academic publications as well. You can have policy briefs when the findings have practical implications, especially in the areas like education, healthcare, or environmental policy. Summaries can be tailored for policymakers and practitioners. Workshops and webinars, sharing results through public lectures or online platforms. It increases the accessibility and engagement. Digital platforms like ResearchGate, academia.edu, different blogs, LinkedIn or research sharing site. You can put your work in there as well for others to review. But again, when you are sharing on the digital platforms, the writing does not have to be in such detail. Now, effective dissemination increases the impact of your review and can foster collaboration, application, and innovation across sectors. Now, let's look at a few examples of existing systematic reviews. Now, before starting your research, you will want to look at existing systematic reviews. This is especially important so that you don't duplicate existing work, and obviously it helps you structure and format your work. Learn the research methodology. It can also be helpful to look at the approaches taken for systematic review similar to your own topic or discipline. Now let's go to the examples. Now here is the first example, let's say. So here is systematic review and call for future research on servant leadership. Now this is one of my personal favorites. Reason being, it's very simple but very elaborate, and it's very detailed, very easy to understand. So it's the first thing you see is an introduction, whereby they identify the importance of servant leadership. Then they describe the research on servant leadership can be categorized into three phases: the phases of research, and then link this phase to their current or systematic literature review, and then identify the need for the systematic literature review, how they want to formulate it, and finally they get on to the research questions. As to what are the research questions, we've already seen the different examples. Now again, from where they are searching and their review span. Again, there is a chart showing how many papers were published each year, and some journals that were included, and these journals that were included, and the number of papers that were published, and their impact factor. Now again, how servant leadership is understood. The concept of servant leadership is defined. Defining servant leadership, its measurement. Now when you are doing a single variable or focusing on one particular concept, the measures are obviously looked into. Then these are the different items, how the items were generated, and their questionnaire administration, the validity, whether it was assessed or not, reliability, all these things. Obviously, once you have extracted the data, put it in Excel, and then you can extract multiple tables. All these tables can be extracted from that particular Excel sheet. Next is the nomological network. Now, what variables impact servant leadership and what are the outcomes of servant leadership? Now, all this is summarized in the nomological network. Now, this is the nomological network, servant leadership impacting other variables, and those variables may impact other variables, and then these become the mediators. The moderators studied with servant leadership, the antecedents, again summarized in another table along with the theories used, the theoretical advancement, and finally the research questions for future research. Now you can combine multiple research questions and conduct your own research. Moving on, let's look at one other example. Now this example is based on PRISMA. Again, the same approach: abstract, introduction with these tables, theoretical background. Now they have slightly different methodology. Now the introduction is very brief. The theoretical background discusses the concept of ESG, and we've got this screening data process. Now this is actually your diagram that explains the keyword search, how they were searched, records identified, screened, final numbers. So you have put the PRISMA process into a diagrammatic view, and then detailed in the methodology as well with respect to the publication over time, the inclusion criteria, selection phase, exclusion criteria, and all. And again, all these tables, you can extract them from that Excel sheet. These graphs, tables can be easily drawn in an Excel sheet as well. So these are a few examples. Again, this is the nomological network or the comprehensive model of ESG performance and disclosure. Again, once you are conducting your research, this is how you can present your synthesized information or the data that you have extracted from the research papers.